Previously on Jetstream.
I've been waiting for this for a long time.
7 fighter pilot rookies get a shot at the big league.
Show me your stuff, man.
And learn to play rough with the F-18 Hornet.
Nice, niggas. Keep pulling. Pull.
They've made all the rookie mistakes.
Flight controls.
You just can't let things snowball and get frustrated. The cockpit is no place for emotion.
There's already been one casualty.
I was unhappy, and it wasn't for me.
They've made it through their solo flights.
Eat your heart out. This is f***ing awesome.
And earned their call signs.
Now Carney.
Carney.
Blow. Teabag.
But in this fighter fraternity, they still haven't made the cut.
It is a calling. It's not a decision you make after watching Top Gun and going, that's what I want to do.
Cold Lake, Alberta is a long 54 degrees north of the equator. But in the heart of summer, the equator is pretty much what it feels like. On the ground, the temperature cracks 100 degrees.
Hot.
Up higher, under the transparent canopy of a fighter jet,
Oh, sweat from my eyes.
a pilot can feel like a bug pinned under a magnifying glass.
It's pretty hot in those cockpits.
Usually you're actually fighting, fighting someone other than yourself.
And that's exactly what these rookies are about to discover. Until now, they've only had to worry about flying the plane. But in the next phase, they'll have to learn to use it as a weapon. So if they've got a weakness, now's the time to fix it.
You put that helmet on your head and start rocketing yourself to the sky, and you have about 1/10 of the brain power that you had to begin with.
Right from day one, Riel Erickson has struggled with her landings.
Walk the throttles, don't clear.
And she's still working on them.
That was a little bit of a hard landing. Oh, that pissed me off.
Practice, okay? When your fingers start to bleed, then you might be getting close.
It's like teaching somebody to drive a Pinto, and then now they're like learning NASCAR.
Mike Lewis has something else to worry about right now. His problem is not flying the jet. It's this. The human centrifuge, designed to test if a pilot can withstand the high G-forces generated by a fighter plane. Lewis keeps passing out. And the fear is, if he can't hack the G's in here, he'll be a dead man if this happens in the air. The military flight surgeon can find nothing wrong.
Did a good history, did a good physical, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's any medical reason or psychiatric reason for these failures.
Whatever the reason, he's got to get over it. Until he passes the centrifuge test, he's limited to flying low-G maneuvers.
We'll see how it goes in a few weeks after flying. Getting the basic stuff down, there's not going to be a problem.
There better not be a problem. He'll get one more shot at the high-G test. And this time, his career is riding on it. Lewis and the others will need every ounce of confidence now. Coming up is one of the most intense and nerve-wracking stages of the fighter school. Formation flying. the art of sticking together. It's something every fighter pilot must learn as a matter of survival. When air combat first started back in World War I, it was every man for himself. And the dogfights were so chaotic, they called them furballs. By the Second World War, fighter pilots discovered it was safer to work in pairs, and they've gone into combat that way ever since.
We never go to war by ourselves. The only time you'll find yourself fighting by yourself is if your leader, your winger, blows up.
The reason is simple. At 400 miles an hour, the rearview mirrors on a fighter aren't much good. And no matter how hard a pilot swivels his head, there's a huge blind spot right on his tail. So, a lone fighter is always vulnerable. But when they fly as a pair, the lead and his wingman can watch each other's back. They call it checking your six. Because pilots describe the airspace as though they're sitting in the center of a giant clock, with 12 o'clock dead ahead and 6 o'clock directly behind.
Okay, formation 1.
Every rookie aims to become a lead one day. But first, they'll have to prove they can be trusted as wingers.
Up until now, you've been flying the Hornet as a singleton, basically, and this is where you start to get into the more tactical phase of the flying. And you're going to turn.
They come from other aircraft where they flew formation, so the concept of formation flying is not new to them. It's just how to do it in the F-18. It's bigger, it's faster.
And it's scarier.
Really be hard to say, okay, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be big. Prep yourself for it, and that way you won't be tempted to fall back. Okay? Okay.
If lead says check right, then just respond.
It's also going to be way twitchier in this situation than any jet they've flown before.
Walk your throttles forward, okay?
Isn't that sort of like one?
Just a little walks. Maybe that's all it needs, okay?
Remember an old car, you kind of just move the steering wheel for no reason at all and the track straight. This plane, if you tap the stick around, it'll smash the plane around all of the time.
Gotta be on the ball. Gotta be on the ball. Everybody formation legs.
And more than any other so far, today's flight is going to test them.
So what do you think the #1 objective is? Don't hit the other guy.
"20,000 feet up, 375 miles an hour. A place and a speed where a bad move and a split second can kill." How close does it get? 100 feet? 50? Today's mission: fly within 15 feet of another jet.
All right, so like you said, man, here's where you earn your money, right? Yeah.
At this speed, you're covering the length of 2 football fields every second. How do you fly this close at that speed? Simple geometry. Seamus needs to work the angles.
You want to bring it in just a little bit closer than that. A little closer than that.
First, look for the missile tip at the end of the wing. Now, Seamus needs to line that up with the maple leaf in the circle. Then, he's got to pull forward until he's flush with the burner cans on the jet beside him.
It's incredible how close it is. That's good right there. Just relax. Your
You're squeezing the juice out of that stick up there, I can tell.
A little bit, eh?
Just relax a little bit. You should be able to do this with 2 fingers.
All right.
Experienced pilots make it look easy, graceful, smooth, calm. But students ain't that elegant.
Okay, back to it, back to it. There we go.
Okay, Mike, walk the throttles. More than what I'm doing?
Mike has to make endless tiny adjustments with his hands and feet.
Why don't we just go forward up now?
And then there's the backseat driver.
He's roaring away at full mill because he doesn't have 200 pounds of God's gift to Earth in the backseat. If you call me self-loaded baggage, I will reach out there and crown you one.
I'd never say that about you, Spanky.
Flying off the wing is tough enough. Now, try this. A close formation called line astern. To get there, you fly into the back end of an F-18 till you feel the other jet's blast. Once your butt starts shaking, you're in the right place. And if you think that jet looks intimidating from here, wait till he does this.
Rolling in.
The flat turn.
Look at how big that airplane is. See how big it is? Yep. That's flat turn right there, man. Freaking huge.
You have to stay close, even though your instincts are telling you to run away.
That's what I was saying in the briefing, right? If you keep them close like this, it's actually easier than if you let them get away from you, okay? Okay.
It's high-stress flying. But when you nail it, you own it. And despite his color commentary, Spanky is impressed.
Hey, you see any parts missing off the airplane? That's a good thing.
It's good to go, yeah.
For Formation 1, that's a successful mission. You can tell guys you have a little bit of experience. We've flown Formation and other airplanes a bit more.
The only thing better than a great flight is when the deputy commanding officer makes a show of it. And Mike's feeling good about something else, too. He's got the orders. He's heading back to retake the G-force test. This time, he's going with the attitude that nothing can stand in his way. Once again, Mike Lewis is back in Toronto facing an old enemy.
It's that damn machine.
The human centrifuge. The machine that tests a pilot's ability to tolerate the punishing physical forces of a fighter jet. Mike must pass this test today if he wants to carry on any further in the fighter program.
We will not be able to fly him in our basic fighter maneuver phase, which requires high G, turning and burning in the airplane, if he cannot successfully complete this course.
Mike knows how serious this is, so this time around he's come well armed. He's reviewed his tapes from last time.
We get sexier and sexier every G.
Keep that chest pressure on.
He's practiced the breathing technique to keep the blood circulating in his brain. And finally, for that extra athletic edge, a 4-story burger.
Apparently, if you smoke and drink coffee and eat shitty food, it clogs up your arteries and you can do it a lot better. Look at the size of that. I don't even know how to smoke.
It's no joke. High blood pressure is an advantage in the centrifuge, and Mike will take any help he can get.
Whenever you're ready, Mike, strap in and practice AGSM in the chair. Okay, let's do it.
Mike must do a series of runs, but the big one, the one that matters, is the last. He must fight through 6 Gs for 15 seconds without any help from his G suit.
All right?
Yep.
Let's do this.
3, 2, 1, launch.
They start him off with a warm-up. It won't crush him, but it's not easy either.
2G. Check 2G.
2G.
3G. Check 3.
3G.
4G. Check 4.
He's never looked better.
How you doing, Mike?
Good to go.
Good. Drop at 5. Check 5.
5G. His body now feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, but he's holding up.
So good.
Good job. Next one is the 6. 6 for 15.
If he can handle 6 Gs for 15 seconds, he can put this behind him forever.
R6 for 15 selected. Check R6 is on the board.
Mike has the enable switch held in.
All right, let's do it.
Launching the R6 in 3, 2, 1, launch.
He G-locked. No one can believe it.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, head back.
Oh, man. I think I like the older.
You okay?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to come to a full stop.
Cool ass.
Full
I
stop.
felt so good there. Son of a bitch. Felt so good there.
Keys up in, doors open, tapes off. Felt so good.
As you know, you're done.
I don't know what happened.
It's bad. But not as bad as it's gonna get when he delivers the news to his instructors. Back at the squadron, the rest of the fighter trainees are straining under the weight of a workload that just got a lot heavier.
So we get 4 hours of BFM ground school tomorrow, eh?
That means tonight is like read. That's 107 pages we gotta read by tomorrow, pretty much. Have fun! Can't keep him waiting.
Seamus has been having fun. He's got a knack for formation flying and seems at home in the air. It's on the ground he sometimes gets into trouble, and it's about to happen again. The planes heading out to formation leave within seconds of one another. Seamus is feeling pressure to keep up. He's rushing through his pre-flight checks, and he misses some of them. Then mistake number 2. Heading toward the runway, he speeds on the taxiway to catch up. By the time he takes off, he's already in trouble. 20 minutes later, he's back. There are problems with the jet, a glitch with the onboard computer, and
You got hydraulic coming out of the number 2 system.
not his fault, but this is.
What's with your switches, mate?
He's failed to shut the plane down properly. Strike 3.
How many errors were on this thing?
Few. Yeah. Few.
Yeah, AC.
Students have bombed the fighter course for screw-ups like this.
Comments from the startup?
Yeah, I missed the fire test A and B check.
Where did that come from?
Like, I know that were going to be expected to go pretty fast later, so I was just trying to speed things up to see how fast they could go. But
Yeah.
I ended up missing a couple things, which is...
I'm not happy with the checks. I don't know where you convinced yourself that it was okay to just do Seamus's checks, but it's not. And then once we got onto taxiway Bravo there, you put the power up to like 79%. Why was that?
Just to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, so those type of power settings on taxiways, too much. No need, okay? So overall, how do you think it went?
Below average.
So there'll be a bit of red on the card for airmanship for checks. I want to see that you can do them right every time.
When you fail any part of your flight, it goes on your permanent record in screaming red ink. Officially, it's called a red tick. Pilots call it blood on the page.
I was given some good advice by our course director. You know, no one ever failed off the course for having kept their lead waiting, but people have failed for missing checks.
And Seamus would have certainly failed this particular flight, but he got lucky. Because his flight was interrupted by a broken jet, he'll get a rare second chance to do it all again.
My own mistakes, those are the things I gotta fix. And it sucks.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's expecting some turbulence, so you must return to your seat and fasten your seatbelt.
Captain Mike Lewis has got bigger problems than any of them. He's about to land back in Cold Lake with bad news. And the squadron's new commanding officer will have to make a decision that could make or break a fellow officer's career. The relationship between pilots and their ground crew is like a marriage. In 1955, the pilots head off to work to bring home the bacon, while the ground crew keeps house, takes care of the kids. They're the unsung heroes, but every pilot knows his life is in their hands. The F-18 Jobin's climbing into is older than he is, and getting fussy. By the time it hits the runway, more than 200 people will have had their hands on the jet, fixing it, fueling it, caring for its 500,000 working parts.
You constantly have to have eyes in the back of your head. When things get hectic, they get really hectic, and jets are rolling by, and the equipment's rolling in the opposite direction. You just have to be on your toes.
And when something goes wrong with one of their $30 million babies,
230, gear done.
they take it very personally.
That's cool.
Jobin is practicing his landings, a touch and go.
Landing gear. Landing gear.
When the alarm tells him there's something wrong with his landing gear.
Landing gear. Cargo reset.
Worse yet, he's flying solo, so there's no instructor in the back seat to hold his hand. He tells air traffic control he's got an emergency.
Tower checks. Hold short of the inner.
Aircraft emergency, CF-18, landing 31 left.
The fear is that Jobin's landing gear could collapse on touchdown. And if there's a fire, emergency crews must be ready to fight it and pull the pilot out.
Bravo 6 is 5 miles, waiting hook down.
Ops colleagues. Bravo 6-2 ups.
6-2 right.
How was the controllability on touchdown there?
6-2, everything was good. The tone went away about a second into the landing.
A warning tone that suddenly disappears without explanation. the F-18 can still surprise even the veterans on the ground crew.
So where was your indication? It's just on touchdown, get the tone. On touch and go?
Yep. Okay. We got some paperwork to fill out inside, and we'll have to put it on jacks and figure out where it is.
Until they find out what happened, the plane is grounded for repairs, and the maintenance crew is already swamped. Which means Master Corporal Scott McDonald's day just got a lot more complicated.
Every once in a while, you get jets just breaking left, right, and center for no apparent reason. Are you heading out or just coming back?
Heading out.
How long do you have? Like 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
This Carney is a student?
The students have a very demanding timeline. They need the airplanes, and we'll do everything in our power to make that happen.
You got about 4 airplanes you have to fix this afternoon.
We got nothing in this.
And 2 hours to do it.
4 sick jets, and 2 hours to fix them. It's a tall order. This patient doesn't look promising.
Somebody screwed up.
The landing gear is bleeding hydraulic fluid all over the hangar floor.
Come on, you bitch.
This jet definitely won't make it.
Pump up in front.
It's having an engine mount replaced.
It comes out one way, you got to put it back in exactly the same way.
Out on the runway, there's another jet with a problem in the cockpit airflow system. If it fails, the canopy could fog over and the pilot would be flying blind.
Ready to put air? You just let me know. How long do you figure before you can hang it?
Even with his crews busting their butts all morning, there's no way Scott can make the deadline.
We need to have 4 jets by 2 o'clock, and we'll get 2 jets up in serviceable, but we'll be short missions.
The pilots fly them, and the guys on the ground keep them in the air. Each needs to be certain they can trust the other.
And the pilots, in my opinion, have to respect the techs because their lives are in our hands every day when we do repairs. And we have to have a great deal of respect for the pilot in the fact that when we're standing in front of that jet, it would take nothing for him to hit the throttle accidentally or run us over.
That bond of mutual trust can be fragile, as Yannick Jobin is about to find out. When a pilot parks his jet, he and the ground crew use a precise set of hand signals to talk to each other. The jet will still be running when the tech dives underneath to chalk the wheels. In that moment, he'll be utterly vulnerable. So he signals Jobin to keep his foot on the brakes. Jobin confirms. But suddenly, he lets the plane creep forward and the ground crew has to jump clear. Jobin has just broken the cardinal rule.
Flight safety, any flight safeties we want to bring up, block, training rule adherence, anything like that.
Anything?
I got nothing.
You sure?
Yeah. For flight safety, well, I got the ground safety deck scene.
You're going to be running over the ground crew?
Yeah.
That one? We'll talk about that more later.
Okay.
It's one of the worst things a pilot can do. Back in the day, Jobin's carelessness might have ended in fisticuffs. It's been nearly 20 years since a Tudor pilot almost wiped out this corporal with a similar move.
He just kept on coming, so I did the tuck and roll under the wing, and he stopped about another 2 or 3 feet past me. Well, it was a little bit freaky for him when I dragged him out of the cockpit. Now you don't do that. Now you let the IP handle everything.
You have to maintain a mutual respect with these guys.
And Jobin's IP, his instructor pilot, didn't earn the call sign Spanky for nothing.
Did you see the brake signal from the guy?
Yep.
This is the one thing, and I'm going to kick your ass about this today, is he gives you the brake signal, you give him the thumbs up, he starts walking towards the aircraft, and what's the aircraft start doing?
Rolling.
It starts moving. And guess what? He's about ready to start running because he doesn't want to get run over. You lose that mutual trust with your ground crew. What do you think is going to happen?
He's going to start
not trusting us and us over.
You're not going to be flying a lot of airplanes because they're miraculously going to develop hydraulic leaks and fuel leaks. Then they're going to shut you down because they don't trust you. And I'm going to red tick you for it.
Yep.
Because you need to learn it right here and now. From an otherwise above average, I would rate almost a superior mission is going to get downgraded because you've broken the trust with that man.
Just to be clear, the ground crew wouldn't actually sabotage the $30 million aircraft.
I have never intentionally broken anything in my career. And I don't professionalism, I don't think I ever would.
But they could make a pilot's life miserable.
If you go to a restaurant and treat your cook like shit, what's he doing to your food?
Knowing you can trust a guy is the glue that holds this place together. And right now, the squadron's brand new commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Constable, has a big problem, literally standing in front of him. They're no longer sure they can trust Mike Lewis to stay safe in the air. When a squadron full of fighter pilots clams up, it's like a party of 8-year-olds suddenly going quiet. You know something's up, and you know it isn't good. For the past couple of days, the 410 squadron's usually open doors have been closed tight, and mouths shut even tighter.
We don't know what's going on the inside. It's human nature. You're always going to speculate, you know, what if, right?
It's about Mike Lewis.
Effective immediately, the CO has removed Captain Lewis from flying on FPC 39 pending the results of this PRB.
Mike Lewis is grounded. And the instructors on this progress review board must consider if he should ever fly fighters again.
We are faced with Mike Lewis not being able to pass the centrifuge training.
And what we're ultimately concerned about is, will he be able to hack it in the aircraft?
Just brought up documents.
Usually, review boards deal with a pilot who's failing in the air. Mike's situation is a first. His repeated failures in the centrifuge have forced them to consider, what if this happens to him while he's flying the F-18?
I think it's been well documented in the past that he's actually has no problem with G in the aircraft, and this might actually be issues with the centrifuge. It's generally regarded as a worse exposure than in the actual aircraft.
I agree.
Pilots swear riding in the centrifuge is like being a passenger in a getaway car. You're hanging on for dear life. In a jet, you're in the driver's seat. You'll get rocked around, but since you're in control, you can adjust to fend off the strenuous G-forces. But those are just details to the squadron's new commanding officer. So new to this job, his chair's barely warm, he's already faced with a hard decision.
The government has spent a ton of money training him, and he's a great guy, and we really want to see him succeed. But at the same time, as his commanding officer, my number one priority is his safety and the safety of others.
And in this squadron, losing consciousness in the F-18 isn't just theory. Haunting everyone is the memory of a fellow fighter who passed out and paid for it with his life.
Rich Bailey was a good friend of mine, and we all mourned his loss in the late 90s when he G-locked, lost consciousness under G, and subsequently crashed.
It looked like he was possibly coming to and was trying to recover the aircraft, but by this time he was going supersonic and was at very low altitude. And ended up crashing into the ground out in the Cold Lake Air Weapons Range.
That's always difficult. You know, that doesn't drive our decisions, but it certainly is something you have in the back of your mind when presented with a case like this.
He is an above average.
For fighter pilots trained to protect one another, It's one lousy assignment to be weighing in on a guy's career, knowing you could help end it.
Unlike reality TV, where you're out there to win your $10,000 for eating a Madagascar roach or something like that, like when you fail at this, it's not reality TV. It's you're failing at something that you have sworn to put your life on the line in order to do.
Ever since he was a kid, Mike Lewis has pinned everything on this.
I'm gonna be a fighter pilot.
Now, it all seems to be slipping away. For the next few days, Mike can do nothing but wait for the review board to finish its work. He doesn't want to talk about it.
I can only imagine your worst fear is just sort of running away on themselves and magnifying, just feeding on themselves over and over again.
Dave McLeod, the new guy, the guy who started the course a month behind everyone else, is on a roll.
What'd you think? Find out in a few minutes.
I didn't get scared, so.
Dave has just nailed a near-perfect formation flight.
The wing work, echelon, and line of stern, I thought that was double awesome superior, okay? So that was really good to see, okay? So
superior. Pilots call that a snake, the best grade there is.
Okay, you've done it once, so you're not like an uber god, but for Form 1 levels, that's a superior trip, okay?
Around the squadron, word travels faster than an F-18 on full burners.
We were like upside down and he was still in position. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I still can't do that. Oh, well.
Seamus Allen has a talent for formation flying too. But in his rush to get into the air, he's been forgetting important details on the ground, and it's cost him. His last flight was a disaster. He has to repeat it, and this time, it's gotta be flawless.
It's being watched, I have to fix it. So for me, that's my stress on this flight, is being accurate with my checks, not missing anything.
Seamus has to reel off more than 300 checks. 300 opportunities to mess up, while the instructor unofficially runs down the clock.
Air fueling probe, track, external tanks, norm, dump switch off, internal switch, norm, gen type control switch, norm, guard down, scope.
This time, Seamus gets it right.
The wind's 280 at 6 knots, both cables up, clear takeoff runway 31 left.
But now, the hard part begins, starting with a formation takeoff.
329, clear takeoff on 3 right.
When you're hurtling down the runway with another jet this close, it's always unnerving.
Good, 309 knots.
Formation is about position. Seamus has to know where he is, where the next guy is, and where they're going. Together, you're 4 times as strong. Alone, you're a sitting duck. Impressive as it may look, flying this close isn't much good in combat. After all, you wouldn't want to shoot a heat seeker with lead a few feet off your wingtip. So today's mission is long-range formation, putting some air between the jets. But in combat, they must maintain radio silence over enemy territory. So how do you turn 4 planes this far apart without anyone saying a word? The lead jet starts a 90-degree turn to the left. When the wingman sees lead's nose pointed at him, he starts his turn. Lead then passes below and behind the wingman. The pair at the back of formation follows suit, and they're all back on the attack. Experienced pilots say even that far apart, you can spot a plane against a cloud like a bug on a bedsheet. But for a rookie like Seamus, that bug seems mighty elusive.
Trunk. Oh, I'm so behind.
Because lead is below him, Seamus has to twist in his seat, stretching, leaning, trying to keep visual contact. Lead starts his 90-degree turn. Seamus follows, but gets his own angle wrong. And at the critical moment, he loses sight of the other jet. They call it going blind. The rest of the formation leaves Seamus behind. But listen closely to this. Nothing. And that's Seamus's real sin. Failing to radio his lead to say he's on his own and exposed.
Going blind is a drag, but call it out right away, call visual right away. I'll tell you a little secret, all right? As a wingman, you will not be visual 100% of the time, okay? You'll probably be visual about 95% of the time, but there will be times when you momentarily, you'll lose your lead, and then, okay, pick him up, lose your lead, pick him up.
Seamus was blind and alone for just a few moments, long enough to get blown out of the sky in combat.
I don't know anything. It's a new aircraft. I just feel like I'm a useless sack on this. What's worse than one right here?
Be fine, man.
You know, it's like
Hey, James, what do you got on your chest? Oh, hey, it's a set of wings.
Oh, hey, let me take them off. It was less responsibility when they weren't there.
Well, you want to play some food? Freeze ball?
They'll all help Seamus get through his personal battle. Whether it's Dave, who just scored another superior flight, or Mike Lewis, who is about to find out if he will ever fly an F-18 again. Every day for the past 8 days has been the same for Mike Lewis, trying to keep busy, distracted from the news he fears is coming. The instructors on the review board have come to a decision on whether Lewis should continue to fly, given his repeated failures in the centrifuge test.
What I said to Mike was I was going to treat him as if he were my son or my brother, and that if I continued to allow him to fly the F-18 and he was involved in some kind of an accident in the future, as we've had happen in the past, then I would be feeling guilty about that, obviously, for the rest of my life.
Mike is officially off the fighter pilot training course.
I asked myself, could I sign this guy off to go up and do a solo on one of these high G missions? And I just could not in good conscience do that.
First of all, you feel that you think you let everybody on your team down, right? So you have to deal with them. And then yourself, and then your family. You're like, okay. And then that's all you've ever wanted to do, so now you're like, oh, crap. You know, is there something? Like, it's just a well of emotions there.
That's got a hole in the bottom. I know his desire to succeed here and his desire to be here. So it is disappointing to see a person like Mike be removed from course for the reasons that he was removed.
We were just, shock would be the best term to describe it.
It really, really sucked. He's a really good friend of mine, and I didn't want that for him.
All the evidence points to a mental block when it comes to Mike's struggle with the centrifuge. So the squadron's senior officers have thrown him a lifeline. They have not ruled out moving him to a later course, but he will still have to pass the centrifuge test, and more than once, to prove it's not a fluke.
That's what always good for you to see it, make it properly.
Oh, well, that's not right.
In the meantime, Lewis is welcome to remain in the squadron, but it can be a cruel place when you're on the outs. A group that began as 7, then 6, has been cut down again. And on this course, that won't be the last of the casualties. That's next time on Jetstream.